What if Aayla Secura had survived Order 66? Aayla Secura had always trusted her men. The 327 Star Corps were her brothers, her allies. Commander Bly had been at her side through countless battles. And yet, the moment the clones received the order, something changed. She felt it before it happened. A shift in the Force. A terrible wrongness. Then, Bly raised his blaster. His hands shook as he tried to fight the commands in his head. General, he stammered. The clones hesitated too. Their respect and loyalty to Aayla fought against the unnatural programming forcing them to kill her. For a brief second, she saw the war in Bly's eyes. A war he was losing. Then he pulled the trigger. Aayla moved. She flipped backward, dodging the first volley. Her lightsaber snapped to life, deflecting 2 bolts. The jungle erupted in chaos. Her men screamed in agony as they tried to resist the order, some even turning their weapons on each other rather than shoot at her. Bly, his hands shaking, barked out, "Run!" Aayla hesitated. Then, with a final look at her men, she vanished into the jungle. For years, Aayla lived as a ghost. She never used the Force. She changed names, faces, identities. Each time she settled on a planet, she found herself looking over her shoulder, waiting for the Empire to find her. She lived in the shadows, in cantinas, in backwater towns. She was no longer Aayla Secura, Jedi Knight. She was just a survivor. But when she heard Rylot's rebellion, everything changed. Her homeworld was suffering, her people were enslaved, and Cham Syndulla was leading a fight that needed her. For the first time in years, Aayla stopped running. She went home. The rebellion had fought hard, but the Imperials were too strong, with overwhelming numbers. Their last hope was the capital city of Lessu. Cham Syndulla had gathered his forces for one final assault, but he knew, without a miracle, they would lose. That miracle arrived in the form of a blue-skinned warrior wielding a glowing saber. Aayla Secura stepped into the light once more, and the Twi'leks rose with her. The city of Lessu stood as the final Imperial stronghold on Rylot. Towering walls surrounded it, thick with turbo-laser cannons, and guarded by legions of stormtroopers. TIE fighters screeched overhead, patrolling the skies, while inside the city, AT-ST walkers prowled the streets like mechanical beasts, ready to crush any resistance. For years, the Twi'lek people had suffered under Imperial rule. The streets ran with fear, the air thick with the despair of a conquered people. But tonight, that was about to change. Aayla Secura stood atop a rocky outcrop, overlooking the city. Beside her, Cham Syndulla and his most trusted fighters knelt, studying the defences below. "This is our only chance," Cham muttered, gripping his blaster tightly. "If we fail here, Rylot will never rise again." Aayla exhaled slowly, feeling the Force weave through the city, through the fear, through the hope. "We won't fail," she said. She ignited her blue lightsaber. A moment later, the signal was given and the battle began. The first wave of Twi'lek rebels rushed the outer gates, carrying heavy explosives on their backs. Stormtroopers stationed above fired immediately, red blaster bolts raining down like death itself. Screams filled the air. But before the Imperials could cut down advancing rebels, Aayla moved. She sprinted forward at inhuman speed, deflecting blaster fire as she leapt straight up the wall. One trooper fell with a quick saber stroke. Another flung backwards by the Force, smashing into a turret. Aayla twisted mid-air, her blade slicing through a heavy gun emplacement before it could fire. Below, Cham's forces planted their charges. The walls shattered inward, sending flames and debris flying into the night sky. The Twi'lek rebels poured through the breach, engaging the stormtroopers in brutal close combat. Blasters fired in every direction. Explosions tore through the city streets. Aayla didn't stop moving. She darted through the chaos, her lightsaber a blur of blue light as she cut a path forward. The first defences had fallen, but the battle was far from over. The Imperials dug in deep, fortifying key positions along the winding bridges and narrow alleyways that made up Lessu's inner district. The Walkers arrived next. A pair of AT-STs stomped into the fight, their laser cannons firing indiscriminately into the rebel ranks. Cham's forces were pinned down. Aayla knew what she had to do. She ran full speed at the first walker, dodging blaster fire as she jumped onto a nearby building. The AT-ST turned toward her, its massive guns swinging into position. Aayla leapt. She landed on the cockpit, driving her saber deep into its armor. Sparks erupted as she tore through the controls, disabling the machine in seconds. The walker staggered before collapsing into a nearby building, crushing Imperial reinforcements below. The AT-ST swiveled toward her, preparing to fire. But before it could, a squad of Twi'lek rocket launchers fired from the rooftops. A deafening explosion lit up the battlefield as the walker was torn apart. The Imperials were losing ground. The Twi'lek fighters rallied, pushing forward with renewed strength. The city was nearly theirs. But then, the air turned ice cold. Aayla felt them before she saw them. She stood in the center, her breathing heavy, her muscles burning. Then, the shadows moved. Two figures emerged from the darkness. They were clad in black armor, their red lightsabers igniting with a hiss. The fifth brother loomed like a beast, his massive form crackling with sheer physical power. The seventh sister was more elegant, slender, calculating, her twin blades spinning effortlessly in her hands. Ayla's grip tightened on her saber. The Jedi are extinct, the fifth brother rumbled. His voice was slow, deliberate. And you will join them. Aayla did not reply. She simply raised her blade and waited for the attack. The fifth brother struck first, his blade coming down like a hammer. Aayla barely managed to sidestep, the ground shattering beneath his attack. The seventh sister lunged from behind, her saber spinning like a saw blade. Aayla dropped low, sliding between them as she slashed at their legs. The fifth brother blocked, but as she kicked his knee, sending him staggering. The seventh sister hissed, flipping backwards onto a nearby ledge. The real fight was beginning. The seventh sister was fast. Her dual spinning sabers were like a storm of fire, striking from every angle. Aayla twisted, dodged, blocked, barely keeping up. Aayla lunged in close, trying to press the attack. The seventh sister grinned and unleashed a forced push. Aayla flew backward, slamming into a stone pillar, pain exploding through her back. The seventh sister moved in for the kill. Aayla, in a desperate attempt, threw her saber. The blue blade spun through the air. The seventh sister barely dodged in time, but that moment of hesitation was all Aayla needed. She surged forward, caught her saber mid-air, and drove it straight into the seventh sister's chest. The Inquisitor's eyes went wide. The fifth brother roared. With terrifying speed, he closed the distance, his saber swinging like a war axe. Aayla blocked high, but the impact nearly dislocated her shoulder. The fifth brother pressed forward, slamming her onto the defensive. His blade was pure, brute force, each attack sending shockwaves through her body. Aayla could not win with raw strength. She had to outthink him. She dodged left, feinted right. The fifth brother overextended. Aayla slashed upwards, slicing through his wrist. He screamed as his hand fell to the ground. Before he could recover, Aayla plunged her saber through his chest. The fifth brother collapsed. The battle was over. Lessu was free. The Twi'lek people had won. But before the celebrations could begin, the ground trembled, and the air turned to ice once again. A single Lambda-class shuttle descended from the stairs. The crowd fell silent. They could all feel it before they even saw him. An overwhelming presence. A shadow that crushed the air itself. Then, the shuttle door opened, and Darth Vader stepped onto the streets of Ryloth. The rebellion trembled. Aayla felt what true fear really was. The Twi'lek warriors raised their blasters, but with a single hand, Vader shattered every blaster into dust. Then he spoke. Aayla Secura. His voice echoed across the city. You will die here. Aayla gritted her teeth and ignited her lightsaber. She had fought many battles, but she had never faced a monster like this. Vader attacked. His strike nearly broke her wrists. Aayla stumbled back, struggling to block his strength. He was toying with her. She darted left, trying to outmaneuver him, but he caught her mid-air with the force and slammed her into the ground. Pain shot through her body. Vader didn't even break a sweat. You are weak, he said, striding toward her. Aayla forced herself up. She would not die kneeling. She launched herself at him, striking with all her skill. But Vader parried effortlessly, then backhanded her across the face. She hit the dirt, blood dripping from her lips. Vader stood over her. This is your end. Aayla made one last stand. She pushed herself up, breathing heavily. Her people were watching. She had to give them hope. One last time. With a defiant cry, she charged Vader, and his red blade struck her down. The battle was over. Lessu fell. Ryloth was lost. But the legend of Aayla Secura lived on. The Twi'lek people would never forget her. Aayla Secura, the warrior of Ryloth. Drop the scenarios you would like to see in the comments, and I will pick one every week for Fan Friday. I hope you enjoyed this video. See you in the next one.